Okay. Let us start with the prayers as others are joining. Om Ajnanathmirandhasya Jnananjanachhalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mayam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Gita Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Radhanath Samnamane Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tishtari Ukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripata Mahamande Shri Gurum Dintarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Yom Tat Sat Hare Krishna. So, welcome back to everyone. So, hope you all had a wonderful Ram Navami celebration. We had a very nice 2-day Ram Katha. The temple had requested me to address the Gita Gyan students. So, somehow it was quite well received. So, the recordings are also there. I have posted them in our WhatsApp group if you missed watching them live, and if at all you're interested in playing back the recording, those recordings are also available. The first class, actually, the recording was turned on a bit late, so class kind of starts roughly 20 minutes or so into the class. So it's not fully recorded, but the second class is pretty much fully recorded. So we want to continue our journey on the 17th chapter, Divisions of Faith. So, a very quick recap of what we have discussed. Krishna is explaining to Arjuna how the modes of material nature, sattva, raja, and tama, that a particular human being has manifesting, how that actually affects all areas of his life. And because we are talking in the context of spirituality and religion, it affects his faith and his worship as well. And Krishna has made significant attempt across this chapter to explain the characteristics of objects of worship in the three modes, the faith in the three modes, food in the three modes, and will also explain, and we are about to enter that section, yajna, dana, and tapaha in the three modes. And the last part of this chapter is focused on how we can elevate ourselves from where we are at whatever platform we are. What is the formula for spiritual elevation in terms of the yajna, dana, tapa, sacrifice, charity, austerity. So the last 4 or 5 verses are devoted to that part. We'll see whether we can get to that part. I somehow feel we may need another class to discuss that, but let's see how far we get. We discussed in our last class with respect to food. That's always our favorite topic. And we discussed about food in the 3 modes. And we discussed how different individuals, based on the modes that they are situated in, how they have a affinity for a particular kind of food. So we discussed about what is the quality of the food in goodness, passion, ignorance. We also discussed what is the result of eating food in those modes. Actually, this is one sure short way to quickly assess who's in what modes. Because generally, to understand who's in what modes requires a significant examination of that particular individual's lifestyle. But looking at food is, I wouldn't say a comprehensive final certification, but is a fairly accurate assessment. And we discussed this also, how food, ahara, is what affects the making up of the body as well as the making up of the mind. The gross part of the food helps in getting assimilated. It gets assimilated into the body and it forms the body. That senses affects the body. And the subtle part of the food, based on whether it is sattvic, rajasic or tamasic, also affects our mind stuff. And the process of yoga, mind control, is so central. In fact, we discussed in earlier chapters, Krishna says that yoga is ultimately about controlling the mind. Of course, that is not the end purpose, but that is the end of the means, in the sense that once the mind is fully controlled, one can actually perceive one's own spiritual identity very clearly. And then one can very clearly understand who we are as a spiritual entity. We can very clearly understand who we are as a part and parcel of the Supreme, eternally related to Him. And then going one step higher is to develop a relationship of love with our Supreme Source. And that is the supreme culmination, the prayojan, prema pumarto mahan. That love of God, love of the Supreme, not just knowing Him is the first step. But when we truly know, we fall in love. Because truth is so attractive. And the soul, by its very nature, being a part and parcel of the Supreme Truth, has a natural affinity, a natural attraction to its source. And that is the perfection of yoga. And that is why that platform of perfection of yoga is known as Bhakti Yoga. So mind control being so essential for us to be able to come to that point, food forms a very important part of those items which need close evaluation, scrutiny, and adjustment to see what is best for a spiritual practitioner. And even though here in this particular chapter, at least in the earlier part, Krishna focuses on food in goodness, passion, and ignorance. As we go towards the end of the chapter, Krishna talks about spiritual food indirectly. In fact, he's talking about spiritual food. He's talking about spiritual sacrifice. He's talking about spiritual austerity, spiritual charity. And what is that one key by turning which all these activities can actually become spiritual? So, of course, we will come to that soon, maybe in the next class. But important to not forget that food is very, very important for a spiritual sadhaka. So, very clearly, Krishna is saying that you want to make spiritual advancement, and not just make spiritual advancement in general, even if you want to be happy in your body, in your mind, in your emotions, then discipline yourself into a sattvic diet. This is a very important principle. Modern civilization is somehow misled into thinking that if I stimulate my senses to the maximum, then I can squeeze out maximum happiness. The more stimulation of any senses, whether it is eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch, taste. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is emphasizing across the Bhagavad Gita that it is not overstimulation that is the path to happiness. It is the path of balance and satisfaction, which is the path to happiness. Rapid swinging leads to agitation of the mind, and an agitated mind is never happy. Ashantasya kuto sukham. For one who is not peaceful in his mind, where is the question of happiness? Even if there is a lot of sensual stimuli, the mind is not peaceful, the mind cannot experience satisfaction. And if that satisfaction is not there, that peace is not there, that feeling of what we call as happiness doesn't come. Sensory stimuli by itself is not happiness. Sensory stimuli by itself is not happiness. Some people try to equate stimulus with happiness, but that is not the case. Anyway, that's a very big topic for discussion, and we have discussed some of these aspects multiple times earlier in the previous chapters. So I think most of you are able to relate to what I have just mentioned. So coming to Sattva Guna is not just an important aspect of or an important stepping stone towards spiritual advancement. What Krishna is emphasizing is that the platform of true material happiness, when I say material, I'm not saying materialistic, beyond material happiness. Material happiness means happiness at the level of the body, the material mind, the material emotions, material intelligence. Even at that level, if one wants to be happy and satisfied, the cultivation of Sattva Guna is very, very important. Because happiness and satisfaction is ultimately a sense of inner feeling. It cannot be judged by one's Facebook DP or our various Instagram posts where we try to show ourselves extremely happy, excited, enjoying life to the optimum at every moment of our life. It's a state of inner feeling. It's a state of satisfaction, contentment, sense of strong well-being accompanied by peace, which is so relishable. And it is possible even in a material setting to actually, which may be externally very turbulent, to actually have that feeling and capture that feeling and maintain that feeling. However, that is possible only when one has cultivated sattva guna in a significant way. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult. So again, the bottom line is, irrespective of whether you want to be spiritually progressive and blissful at the level of soul, or you want to be happy, truly happy, sattva guna is mandatory. The platform of Rajogun is the platform of agitation. Yes, there may be success in Rajogun. There may be sensual stimulus in Rajogun. But when a person is situated in Rajoguna, even with success and even with sensory stimuli, one may still not be happy, or one will still not be happy. One will still have an agitated and disturbed mind. That is why for a person who is greedy, I'm just giving an example because greed is a symptom of Rajogun. For a person who is greedy, he will never be happy or satisfied. Why? Because no matter what he achieves, he's not even trying to be satisfied with what he has achieved. He's always looking at what he has not yet got and what more he can get. His consciousness is always absorbed with more, 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 more. Gaurang Prabhu was once giving an example of sometimes, we are in a line to take, our meals. He was talking about in a temple environment. We are holding our plates and we are going through a line where we are being served various items. And a Rajogun person is, rather than looking at his own plate and seeing whether he has got what he has got and what he needs to be adequate for himself, is more interested to see how much the other person got. How much the person in front of me got, how much the person behind me got. I got only 2 pakoda, did he get 3? Why I didn't get 3? I also want 3. So he was sharing that observation of how our consciousness is so much. We are not even, probably all we need is 2 because there are so many items in the feast, but our consciousness is trying to focus on more, on looking at others who have something which may be more. So I'm just giving one small example. But this is what happens. And the reality of this world is, no matter at what position we are, there'll always be people who will be in a better situation than us. In some phases of our life. So that is why Rajogun consciousness is not a consciousness of satisfaction. It's a consciousness of continuous comparison. Compare, complain, and criticize. It starts with compare, then you complain, then you criticize, and you're always agitated. So Kali Yuga is full of this. It's in Kali Yuga there is so much quarrel and chaos. Sattva-guna person is really seeing what he needs and whether his needs are properly met, and his focused on developing one's own sense of well-being at a more deeper and deeper and deeper level. That's why a Sattva Guna person is always focused on becoming a better version of himself, rather than trying to say that I'll be better than X or better than Y. Anyway, that's a different topic. So coming back to our discussion, uh, uh, Sattva Guna is paramount in all situations. And after having discussed about food, Krishna is now going to discuss about sacrifices in the three modes, and then he goes into austerities and then into charity. So let us see what the Lord is talking about in terms of sacrifices. Now, I just want to mention this upfront, and I think I briefly mentioned this the last time also. When Krishna categorizes all these various areas, Yajna, Dana, Tapa, Ahar, faith, three modes, you will notice that the defining aspect of Sattva Guna is always where there is a sense of detachment and selflessness. The main defining characteristics of the Rajoguna is selfish interest. And the characteristic of Tamogun typically is that the understanding and idea is so erratic that it practically gives the means as well as the result is practically opposite of what it should actually be. So as we go through these various areas, please do notice this. And if you just remember these three, Sattva is the platform of detached, selfless engagement, which is aligned with scripture. Rajogun is the platform of, even if one may be following scriptural rules, one is doing it in an attached, selfish way. And when it comes to Tamogun, one is actually working against or opposite to how something should be done and getting also a result which is totally contrary. But one is unable to see, because one is in ignorance, one is unable to see how one is actually going away from the goal rather than coming closer. So we are discussing from verse 11 onwards. So in verse 11, Krishna talks about sacrifice or yajna in the mode of goodness. So Krishna says, Afala kangshe bir yajnyo vidhi dishto yadijjate yastavyam eveti manaha samadhaya sasatvikaha. For a sacrifice, a worship, a ritual to be considered to be of the nature of goodness, first it must be performed according to scripture. You must follow the system which is set up properly. First. Second, it must be done as a matter of duty and not for desire of reward. As a matter of duty, I ought to do this. I am indebted to God and God has done so much for me. I should perform this particular worship, express my gratitude and thank Him. So it's a matter of duty. He's giving me so much. Krishna says this kind of worship is in the mode of goodness. So the principal point God is mentioning here, Krishna is mentioning here is that for worship to be of the quality of goodness or of the quality that elevates one further in one's spiritual elevation, it must be done at least without being impelled with a desire for material gain. It must be done as a duty, in a selfless. And what is yajna in the mode of passion? Krishna is telling Arjuna, Arjuna, when somebody is performing yajna, which is aimed at personal benefit, I want to do this yajna because I want wealth, I want children, I want some material benefit, whatever it is, freedom from difficulty. Or sometimes may even be for the sake of pride. What does that mean? That means sometimes some people perform big yajnas, not because they want to gain something, but they want to show off a big puja and a big havan and big something just to show off. Oh, I did such a big puja. For example, if there's a very big gathering, thousands of people for a festival, and there's a yajna to be organized, sometimes some rich people want really to go and be the main yajman, that yajna. And they'll pay thousands or lakhs to become the person sitting in front of that yajna and doing that yajna. They are not necessarily doing that yajna because they want to get some benefit from the Lord or from the Devata, but just because they want to increase their prestige in front of the whole community and whoever is gathered there. And that is actually pretty common in Kali Yuga. Sometimes even faithless people do like that, just to make a show, just so that they are honored and respected as very religious. So this kind of motivation, either for a gain, even if one is performing the yajna properly according to scripture, if the motivation is material gain, one is doing a yajna for Lakshmi so that one gets money, one is doing a yajna to Surya for good health, yajna to Lord Shiva to get a good husband or wife. Even if the ceremony is performed properly according to scripture, this kind of worship which is done out of ichha for phalam or out of dambha or pride, such yajna is said to be rajasam. So rajasam yajna or rajasic yajna, these give very temporary results. So even if the result comes, and we are not saying that the result will not come, even if it is done with rajoguna, in that puja, whatever, some benefit will still accrue because it is done according to vidhi. But then it becomes a very temporary transaction where one performs a particular fruitive activity, gets its results, and the end. There is no real spiritual elevation that comes about by that kind of worship. So Krishna is not particularly recommending a rajasic worship. And unfortunately, in today's time, rajasic and tamasic worships are the most common. In fact, nowadays I can say it is more tamasic than rajasic. Why I'm saying like that? Because at least in Rajasic, one is following the ritual properly according to scripture. But in Tamasic, Krishna says, Vidhihinam asrishtanam mantrahinam adakshinam shraddha virahitam yajnam tamasam parichakshate. Tamasic process of worship is actually very whimsical. Whimsical means one doesn't even take reference as to how something should be done properly. One does the worship vidhihinam without even following the process properly. Correct? Sometimes, even when, especially when people just want to do a particular religious ritual just as a show off, then they'll just tell the pujari, see, I want to do, I want to do this yajna, but I'm paying you this money not to do the yajna properly. I'm paying you this money so that you wrap up the yajna within half an hour. Because after that, I want to really celebrate. The celebration is coming. I need time to celebrate. I want to eat and drink and dance and enjoy. The pujari says, no, this yajna cannot be done in half an hour. No, I'm paying you extra so that you can do it in half an hour. So Vidhi Hinam is not even following the Vidhi. And this oftentimes nowadays happens in marriages. They say, no, we cannot sit for 3 hours. Huh? Can we do shortcut marriage? 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Because we want to get to the fun part of the marriage. The part where there is more exciting activity at the Rajogun level. So one aspect of Tamogun worship or Yajna is there where it doesn't follow scripture. The other aspects of not following scripture, Krishna gives other examples. In every Vedic Yajna, there is always distribution of prasad at the end. So that Yajna where there is no distribution of prasad is considered tamasic. That Yajna where there is no proper recitation of Vedic mantras, that yajna where there is no dakshina given to the priests, that yajna which is done without faith, such yajnas are said to be tamasic in nature. And they don't actually give any material benefit actually. In fact, sometimes they may be counterproductive. So sometimes one may end up committing more offenses rather than actually get benefit. Offenses to the deity who's being worshipped, offenses to the brahmanas, offenses to so many other personalities who may be gathered there. So if you see these three, Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic Yajna, you realize that in Kali Yuga, especially in today's time, Rajasic is also very difficult to find. Most of the rituals are quite tamasic. There's so much of shortcutting. The Brahmanas do not know the mantras, or they cut short the mantras, or they don't pronounce it properly. The rituals are not done, the ingredients are not pure, the mantras are not properly done, nor are the qualified Brahmanas, the priests, properly honored or remunerated, and also prasad is not. So another point to note from here is, and this is another point generally that one should recognize from here is, the fact that Krishna is mentioning these are the characteristics of tamasic yajna and this is what is not done in a tamasic yajna. That means in proper yajnas, all these things must be there. which means the rituals must be as per scriptures, the mantras must be said properly, there must be a proper qualified person to execute it, and he must be properly given dakshina. Both the performer of the yajna, the yajman as well as the priest, must have proper faith. Mantras must be recited and food must be distributed at the end. Srila Prabhupada would also emphasize that even for us, even though our focus is bhakti, devotion, even though we are not so much into rituals and yajnas, even Sankirtana is a yajna. Even coming together and discussing Hari Katha is also a yajna. Yajnai Sankirtanai Prayai Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. The Bhagavatam says, in Kali Yuga, those who are intelligent people, they do not indulge in fire yajna. They indulge in the yajna of coming together and congregationally glorifying the Lord through His holy name and through His katha. Yagyai Sankirtanai Prayai Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. Sumedasa means those who are really intelligent. And Prabhupada emphasizes that even in such yajna ceremonies, whenever we come together for celebration, for us the equivalence of proper method or proper mantras is the chanting of the holy names or discussion of Bhagavad Katha. And such yajnas or programs should ideally be concluded with distribution of prasad. Prabhupada would emphasize that so much. Of course, unfortunately, on a Zoom call, it is not possible to distribute prasad unless you want me to show you a plate decorated with a lot of items. Then you will feel even more offended with that I am not giving you anything. So that's the disadvantage of Zoom. But of course, wherever possible, we should, when we do physically, it is generally expected. So even when we were having our classes in Pines, we would make sure that at least something we give and distribute as prasad. But that's important. Chanting the holy names or kirtan, discussion of Hari Katha, and distribution of prasad. And of course, generally also there is an expectation that, expectation in the sense, not an expectation from the individuals, but an expectation from the system, as it is mentioned here, that generally one expresses one's gratitude to whoever is offering that service to reciprocate in some way. And that is why it is said, even when we go to the temple, we should take some offering or give some dakshina. That is important because that actually completes the process. So the various elements mentioned here, it's not about the ritual, but these are important aspects of a spiritual transaction. And when we follow the system properly, like what is mentioned here, then we will see that we will get the proper benefit and we will also make rapid spiritual advancement. Okay, so I want to move on. We have discussed about the sacrifice part. So Prabhupada is very emphatic that one should not simply do worship and ceremonies just to make a ceremonial show. One should do it with earnest faith, with a proper good motivation. Now then after this, Krishna speaks about tapaha or austerity in the three modes. And Krishna begins by first explaining what is the meaning of austerity. That's also a very interesting discussion. Let's see, perhaps we will try to see if we can go through this section today. Krishna first in verses 14, 15 and 16 mentions that austerity or tapasya itself is of three kinds. Austerity of body, austerity of speech, and austerity of mind. So before I go into the three verses, I just want to mention to you what is the concept of austerity. This is very important to understand. What is the meaning of tapaha? So in very simple words, tapasya or tapaha or austerity means voluntarily undergoing an inconvenience for a higher cause. Voluntarily undergoing an inconvenience for a higher cause. What this means in very simple words, again, to further explain this, the tendency of the materially conditioned body, mind, speeches to act very whimsically or to get attracted to lower things. It is very easy for water to flow down, right? Very difficult for water to flow up. Going up or elevation is always an uphill task. Going down is very easy, correct? If you want to go down a hill, all you have to do is just roll yourself down and then you will continue to go down. You don't really need to put any great effort. Of course, you will be, badly bruised and injured in the process, but that's exactly what happens when you allow yourself to get degraded. But if you want to go uphill, which means you want to elevate yourself in your consciousness, that of course requires effort. It requires sustained, deliberate effort in a disciplined way over a long period of time. So austerity or tapasya that we're talking about here is about at the bodily, speech and mind level, what are those things which are important to do or to be careful not to do, which typically the body, mind and speech faculty typically loves to engage to do. Correct? A very simple example is everybody loves to eat indiscriminately. There's a lot of food and a lot of tasty food. You want to eat. So what is austerity? Austerity means to control or limit our eating is austerity. Fasting is austerity. We love to eat, but today you have to fast. Today is Ekadashi. That is tapasya. Or you can only eat one gulab jam. You cannot eat two. That is austerity. So there's some control, there's some moderation. Or in speech, one just loves to blabber whatever comes to one's mind. You want to sometimes just pour out and shout out, especially when we meet or see certain individuals. But then what is austerity? Control, rein in. Controlling tendencies which drag one downwards is austerity. Deliberately doing things which take one upward is also austerity. Okay, both are aspects of austerity. So yama and niyama, both are austerities, both are tapasya. So let us see what Krishna is saying in his definition. So verse 14, Krishna says, Devadvija Guru Pradnya Ujanam Shauchamarjavam Brahmacharyam Ahimsacha Shariram Tapa Uchate. Krishna defines austerity of the body by saying austerity of the body at the bodily level means giving proper respect. One of the items is giving proper respect. That may be to God, to spiritually advanced people, the Brahmanas, one's spiritual teachers, one's guru, and superiors like parents and teachers and elders. So that is one area. Which means the guru enters the room. What is austerity of the body? You may be lying down on your bed. The guru enters, austerity of the body is no. Get up from your bed and stand up. Show proper respect. Or you are in the temple. Don't lie down and stretch your feet towards the deity. Austerity is to always maintain a respectful posture and not show your back to the deity. So proper display of respect, or in certain cases to bow down and touch somebody's feet. One is going and seeing one's parents after a long time, when they touch their feet. If one is meeting one's spiritual teachers, Shiksha Gurus, Diksha Gurus, offer proper respects to them. One cannot see one's Guru and say, hi Guru, how are you? If one is not careful in properly showing respect, one actually degrades. Where respect is due and respect is not properly shown, one actually degrades. So austerity of the body is to show proper respect. And this is especially important for the first three categories that Krishna mentions for the Lord, for spiritually advanced Brahmanas. What does Brahmana mean here? Brahma Janati iti Brahman. Those who are conversant with spiritual science, those are Brahmanas. And Guru, one spiritual teachers. That is very, very important. And of course, parents. Very, very important. So Krishna specifically mentions these four categories. Of course, there may be so many others who deserve respect, who are our elders, or more advanced in us in various aspects of life. They also deserve respect, but especially these four are very important. And one must be careful to offer proper respect. Another aspect is Shaucham, cleanliness. Some people just love not to take a bath. So lazy. Why should I? I just want to get up and straight go to the dining table and eat my breakfast. But maintaining proper cleanliness of the body is also an austerity which must be done. The scriptures especially recommend that one should bathe at least twice, if not thrice, in a day. That is austerity of the body. One must also be simple. Simplicity here means avoiding duplicity. Another two aspects of austerity of the body are brahmacharya or celibacy and non-violence. So celibacy in the context of married people is being chaste to your partner alone, right? That is also considered celibacy. And non-violence means to not unduly harm another person in deed, word or thought. So these are areas which are considered to be austerity of the body. What is austerity of speech? Krishna says, Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyaya abhyasanam chaiva vangmayam tapa uchyate. What is vangmaya tapa? Vak means speech. Vangmaya tapa means one must be careful about what one speaks. So what is the quality of speech which is considered appropriate? So Krishna describes what is the right quality of speech. He says that one must follow or remain within these parameters. Then one is considered to be austere in his speech. So one, anudvega karam. Anudvega karam means do not speak in a way that you will agitate and irritate others. Kali Yuga, this part is very, very hard to follow. See so many people, speaking always in such ways that it really agitates and irritates others. And the best place you can see such kind of extremely irritating, agitating conversations if you get into TV debates. That's the best place where you can see all this, especially in Indian TV debates. I don't know about other countries. My God, what all they will speak. If you want, if you're peaceful and you want to be frustrated, you should watch a TV debate of India, of Indian politicians. So do not speak words which agitate others. Also, one must be truthful in one's speech. Truthful speech is following austerity of speech. The words must also be pleasing and must be beneficial. So don't agitate others. Speak in a way, speak with the purpose of benefiting the other person and speak it in a pleasing way. Even if you have to correct somebody, make sure what you're saying is factual. Don't simply cook up something or put false accusations. Make sure it is factual. Make sure that it is done with the interest of helping the other person, not just to bring them down and criticize them or enjoy at their expense. And say it in a pleasing way. Recently, there was this very interesting episode in the Oscar Awards. I don't know how many of you are aware of that episode. I think that episode has become so famous that everybody knows. Those who don't know Will Smith also now know Will Smith. And those who don't know, what is that guy's name? Chris Rock or something like that. He has also become so famous. And everybody, for the last few weeks have been talking so much about them. This is also one good example of not following austerity of speech. Trying to entertain others at the cost of mocking or joking about somebody else. See, this is the sad thing that, the level of entertainment has gone so down. Rather than being creative, poetic, profound, artistic in expressing some noble thoughts and entertaining others, nowadays entertainment or even jokes have predominantly become about poking fun at others, insulting others. The quality of humor has also gone down so much. So in that particular Oscar episode, even though so many people spoke about how Will Smith shouldn't have done what he did, while generally most people agree that he should have been a bit more tolerant, but many people also point out, was it the right thing to do in the way that the host of the show joked about his wife, especially when she was going through a difficult health situation? So one has to be sensitive to that also. So austerity of speech means, is it factual? Is it you are saying with the right intention, with the intention of benefiting somebody? And have you presented that idea in very pleasing words in such a way that the other person is not agitated, so that the message is well received? If that is done, then that is austerity of speech. And another thing Krishna adds in terms of austerity of speech, which is that austerity of speech is also reciting of scripture and discussing of scripture is considered also austerity of speech, which means rather than talking rubbish, nonsense, gossip, if you are discussing divine message, if you are using your tongue to speak about Gita, about Bhagavatam and discuss that message, that is also austerity, because that takes one higher. So the previous part was about what not to do and how to control lower tendencies. and the other part is about how to engage the tongue. So if you cannot speak something good, zip your mouth. Don't speak. That is also austerity. So sometimes austerity is just keeping silence. If you cannot appreciate somebody, then you should zip your mouth. One can correct others only when one is doing it in a positive way, and that too, if one is in a position to correct others. One does not take it upon himself to correct others for whom one is not responsible. Then that becomes agitating. So we'll just go through the third verse and then we'll stop just a few more minutes. Please bear with me. The third is the austerity of mind. Manaprasada saumyatvam maunam atma vinigraha avashuddhi iti etat tapomanasam uchyate. What are the qualities of the mind which are considered tapasya of the mind? Tapasya of the mind means to maintain the mind in a state of consciousness with certain attributes or qualities which are considered progressive for spiritual elevation. So what are those qualities? Satisfaction. Satisfaction is the opposite of greed. Simplicity, opposite of duplicity. So one must be simple and straightforward and not, duplicity means trying to show oneself to be something one is not, or, trying to be manipulative, pretentious. All these are duplicities. Gravity or silence. Self-control. The mind wants to go in so many directions, especially to things or thoughts which are not conducive for spiritual advancement. Control the mind. Nigraha. Purity of heart, having the right intentions. These are austerities of the mind. Satisfaction, simplicity, silence, self-control, purity of heart. So when all these austerities are managed, then one can actually make spiritual progress. That is the point. So in the subsequent verses, which we'll not discuss today, after having defined the three types of austerities, Krishna very quickly in verses 17 to 19 summarizes austerities in Sattva-guna, austerities in Rajoguna, and austerities in Tamoguna. So next time we'll go through that. And next time we will intend to complete the chapter from verses 17 onwards up to verses 28. I think we should be able to complete the chapter the next time. So I'm opening up the floor. Any questions or comments you can take? Sorry, it has been a great austerity of mind for you to peacefully hear my talk. So thank you for that austerity. Yes, anyone? So you're all following the austerity of silence. Excellent. Oh, there's a question in the chat. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Shamala Mataji is asking. How to deal with people that hurt our feelings, maybe on purpose. Yeah, so if we apply, so I'm talking in the context of austerity. Yeah. So of course, this question we can discuss in a lot of ways, and there are a lot of contexts for all this situation. So there is no easy answer. But what is important is avoid, Krishna is saying, avoid a harsh response, even though you may be spoken to in a harsh way. So, and there are many reasons for that. One is, when you fight fire with fire, the fire only increases. He said one word to you, you think you will say two words so that you can drown his one word, but then the other person will say four words. and it never ends until words come to fists and fists comes to knives and bullets, and there's a lifelong enmity. So it really depends on who are the parties involved, who has hurt, what is it. In some situations, if something is not factual and if somebody is just saying something and that person doesn't really matter, one may even choose to not respond to that situation, just maintain one's dignity and walk off from that situation. And sometimes one can respond to the situation in a calm way by properly considering whether what is being mentioned is factual, it is correct, and based on the factual aspects of what is being said, whether it is worth responding to those factual aspects of what is being communicated. Correct, because it matters how something is said, right? So when somebody is hurt, if somebody tells me, Chandra Prabhu, you are overweight, you are fat. Now this thing, there are two aspects to it. One is whether factually it is correct or not. That is one part. And second thing is how it is said. Was it said with a way that meant well, out of concern? If my mother says that to me, or my spouse says that to me, out of concern, that's a different thing. If somebody says that to me just to mock, then that's something different. So there are many situations. But I think what is most important is that one should see whether one wants to respond to the factual aspect in a balanced way. One must always consider the intent and not be distracted too much by the emotional part, and give a measured response. So again, without context, it's very hard to say this is how you should respond. But all I can say is austerity in such cases is to not respond in kind. Don't respond to a harsh situation in a harsh way. Of course, if it is a persistent, consistent abuse, then one may have to see how to deal with it. But then that's a different situation. But all great souls, all mature people say that most of the violence actually nowadays, especially for us who live in the so-called civilized world, most of the violence is at the verbal level. A lot of harsh words, harsh tone, judgments, comparisons, criticism. So one must be careful to not do the same. That's why what Krishna spoke in terms of austerity of speech, our response must be compliant with this. So depending on the situation, one may answer somebody's hurtful comment in a calm, quiet manner and address that issue. And there are many ways to do that. Or sometimes the best strategy is to just avoid or not bother. Again, it depends on what is being said. You don't need to respond to everything that everybody says. And can maintain a dignified presence without giving undue attention to certain things which are being said. Like it is said sometimes that if you hurl insults at me and if I don't accept it, what does it mean? means that it goes back to you because I didn't accept it. So one can have a dignified response like that. Yeah. But don't give control of your emotions to others. That is very important. You give control of your emotions to others, you essentially give them a remote control to disturb you. So don't do that, and they enjoy that. Correct? Okay, I think, yeah, if there are specific scenarios, we can discuss it one-on-one separately. But yeah, so those who are regularly hurting us, we must carefully reconsider our relationship with them, see whether there is some deeper reason why somebody is behaving with us like that, and see if we can fix it. Or if we see it is purely driven by envy, envy is very hard to fix. Envy is very hard because all other issues you can resolve through proper conversation. Envy cannot be resolved through conversation because envy means the person just is not happy that you are what you are. So how to fix that? That you cannot fix. Such cases are sometimes just good to probably keep some distance. But in many other situations, having open, proper communication, setting the right boundaries in the relationship, having the right agreements of our expectations in various relationships can help us resolve a lot of issues. Okay. Any other point or question? Okay. So since there's nothing else, I will see you all on Saturday. So Saturday we'll continue our Bhagavatam discussions at 9 p.m. Okay. Thank you all very much. Santara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Thank you everyone, and have a good evening or a good day, based on wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Swatiji.
Hare Krishna.
Shalini ji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Shamala Mataji, thank you. Sridhar ji, Hamsini, Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.